Some of my most popular videos have been going over the best and worst of every weapon class for all 3 Splatoon games. But what if today we pit them all against each other? And I'm not just talking about the end games, I mean every single balance state of all 3 Splatoon games combined. In this decade of balance history, what are the absolute best and worst weapons in every single class? Today, we're going to start with the best, and stay tuned for the end for what I think is the best weapon of all time. Let's get started. First up, we have shooters. This has competition from all 3 games, being launch Splatoon 1 96 Deco, patch 5.4 Kensa 52, and Splash-O-Matic on the launch of Splatoon 3. Launch 96 Deco is by far the weakest main weapon. Less range than some weapons like the Splattershot Pro, a lack of Splatoon 2 shooter mobility buffs in general, but it was still a solid mid-range 2-shot. However, the thing that really made it special at the time was its kit. Old Wall couldn't be cycled, but it had about 40% more HP, and you could stand in the middle of it and tank from all sides with a technique called showering. As for Kraken's differences, it lasted a second longer than it does at the end of the game and was 180p instead of 200, as well as having no end lag. However, 96 Deco wasn't put into the game until after knockback was added. Though it was harder to do, there could have been a version of this weapon where you couldn't push back its Kraken as well. Not that running or swimming were great anyway, since Kraken could be made faster with your own swim speed in this game. Splatoon 2's Kensa 52 is infamous as the most buffed main weapon of all time, by far being a stronger main weapon than 96 Deco. Since the main weapon paints and outputs such a useful special so frequently, it can also force fight since its passive value is much higher than something like 96 Deco. Wall, while weaker at this time, could also be cycled, which along with Booyah Bomb contributed to its high survivability while having better team utility. That leaves our final candidate as the Splash-O-Matic for Splatoon 3, one that shouldn't be counted out either. Crab, especially at this time, was an insane stalling tool with 9-second duration, no end lag, and faster turning speed, with a burst bomb that was cheaper and a main weapon that painted even more than it does today, naturally stacking with itself better than other options. This might seem really hard to narrow down, as all of them have their advantages, but I think I'm gonna eliminate Splash from the running first. The fighting focused shooters here just have too many powerful options to subvert Splash's toolkit, and honestly pretty much any supportive playstyle back then. Between the 2 gals though, while it might seem a little less obvious, I'm actually gonna give this win to K52. Yes, old Kraken is incredibly broken, and Wall is definitely stronger, but the gap between main weapons is just too large. Outside of 96 having more range, pretty much every single stat you can think of, K52 does better. In some cases, a lot better. And its kit isn't exactly bad either. Booyah Bomb still gets an insane amount of output while being good for survivability and paint utility, and Wall can be cycled, which makes up for having less HP with how ink efficient 52 is. I think that ultimately gives it the win here. Next up are the semi-autos. Goodbye Splatoon 3, you're basically out of the running immediately. Splatoon 1 has Cherry H3. Unfortunately, Wall is a bit nerfed here compared to 96 Deco, but Bubbler had better team utility, allowing the weapon to be more supportive with light depletion, only losing 40% of its special on death. It had access to damage up to be a 2-shot kill, and this is before Bubbler got its small duration nerf, meaning this lasts a total of 5 seconds. In many ways, this is a better 96 Deco, despite the slightly weaker kit than old Kraken, because the main and its playstyle are a lot more threatening and flexible. Splatoon 2's competition for this is Foil Squeezer, specifically from version 5.0. This has a fighting weapon with fast range, high mobility with a Splat Bomb 180 Bubble Blower before its last size nerf, giving it access to a very broken Bubble Blower combo. Its range, mobility, ink efficiency, and paint are all significantly better than they are today, which means that in terms of main weapons, Squeezer definitely beats out Cherry H3 even with its damage up. But while its kit is really strong, a 180p light depletion Splatoon 1 Bubbler is just a little bit too powerful. Paired with its Wall, its supportive playstyles can slow down the game enough or provide enough options to deal with stronger fighting options like Squeezer. So Cherry will get the win here. Next up, rollers. Splatoon 2 is instantly out of the running here, and while Splatoon 3 does have a very good carbon deco before the Zuka nerf and a strong V-roller, both are just honestly behind Splatoon 1 carbon. It's like Splatoon 3's carbon roller, but with no vertical flick, a 10-point cheaper Zuka, which had instant startup, quad burst bomb, damage up, and a better horizontal flick. Yeah, it's kind of just demolishing Splatoon 3, making it the easy win of this category until you remember Splatoon 1 Dynamo on launch. Yeah, Sprinkler is a little bit more expensive, but it does paint better for longer, and it had Echolocator. Again, not an amazing special, but 12-second instant location time and ink tank refill, which is perfect for enabling this broken main weapon. Way more range, damage up to extend all of that, significantly better paint, 180p for special, which helps make up for the ink efficiency problem, faster since heavyweight didn't exist, less waiting frames to recover your ink tank, and you could kill both without ink and with your entire flick hitbox, so aim was very much not required. It's also worth noting with old stealth jump, you landed with that insta-kill flick, by the way. This weapon turfed the entire map, shut down anything near it, and had speed and a solid special as its only conceivable flaws. Nothing really comes close. Chargers are up next. Ray Charger from Splatoon 2 is a bit annoying, and Pencil is a solid main, but really nothing holds a candle to the winner of this category, Splatoon 1 Launch Scoped E-Liter. Scoped is noteworthy, has a little bit more range, and there's no charge hold in this game. The special being 180p instant location I already talked about, but now it's attached to an E-Liter of all things. This weapon had more range, quad burst bomb, and damage up that allowed for not just 2 partial kills, not just for burst combos, but 55% of a partial could kill. No other charger stood a chance against this thing. You could literally play this like a Swiffer, and it would be better than any version of Swiffer in the last decade. Sloshers have a very obvious pick here for every single game. Splatoon 1 Slosher has the Burst Bomb Strike one, the only downside being a weaker but still somewhat useful special, with this weapon being infamous for 3 subs of damage up, allowing consistent combos with the sub weapon, even on its 25 damage hit. It was so broken that you saw multiple of these, even without invincibility specials being attached to them. Splatoon 2's candidate is Launch Tri-Slosher, which has triple burst, 180p armor since we can use its version before the week 1 patch, and armor granting you a little bit more invincibility after its removal. The main was infamous at the time for more range, but does technically fire slower than it does today. Finally is Splatoon 3's launch with Machine, Fizzy Bomb, and Booyah Bomb. The main fired faster and was a bit better in ink efficiency, and its sub was insanely good at passive paint spam at only 200p. However, the reason it's even competitive in this category is old Booyah Bomb. At this time, Booyah Bomb had its mash limit removed, meaning that macro Booyah Bomb could basically insta-charge the special weapon, making it an utterly broken panic button. So yeah, that was pretty busted, and makes this a pretty close category. That said, I'll rule out Splatoon 3, as without Macro Booyah, the main and sub are just weaker than the other candidates, so the real question is Splatoon 1's burst combo so broken that it makes up having Strike instead of an older, stronger ink armor? And for me, I'm gonna say yes. Tri may have been dominant, and armor back then was really annoying, but you have to remember, this era of the game was one where competition was its absolute lowest. There was very few main weapons, and pretty much all of them were nerfed way too low down, which definitely inflated how good Tri-Slosher was in that meta. On the other hand, Splatoon 1 Slosher existed during one of the strongest eras of the game, and it still dominated. I think that makes it the clear winner here. Splatlings are up next. For Splatoon 3, I mean Edit or Old Ballpoint are fine, but really doesn't hold a candle to Splatoon 1 or 2 here. Our main competition for Splatoon 1 is the Zinc Mini Splatling. The main was pretty strong, even today, but its kit was amazing, especially given that we're going to use pre-2.7 Zimmy Splatling, so this had 50% instead of 75% depletion. This kit had Toxic Mist that could stick to opponents and paired with Mini's mobility. If you comboed it with your Invincible Bubbler, you had the Disruptor combo that was basically impossible to stop. Back in the day, this weapon was stacked multiple of, which honestly makes it even more insane that this weapon isn't going to be the winner here because of Splatoon 2's Ballpoint. Specifically Ballpoint Nouveau in 4.3, right when MPU damage up was added. Look, Beacon and Rain is definitely worse, but the gap in main weapon power here is just through the roof. Just imagine a fusion dance between Mini and Hydra Splatling. It was better than S1 Mini in terms of main weapons, and it could fit damage up just fine. It worked on both its firing modes, and like every stat is so much better. Strafe speed, paint, range, accuracy, the list goes on. Just look at all the nerfs it had to get. And even after all of these, it's a solid weapon. I can't say the same after Mini got a relatively smaller patch of nerfs. You had to really just be there to realize how much people hated the weapon at the time, how overtuned it was. Ballpoint didn't even really have to fight you, and the main weapon in either of its range category modes outclassed class to most of the options in the game, let alone them put together. Zimmy has the better power spikes with the stronger kit, but the main weapon power is just way too large. And Ballpoint Nuvo's kit, while definitely worse, is still very solid. Next up are the blasters. Splatoon 2 has no real candidate here, and while Splatoon 3 recently has had a strong S-Blast, in version 9.2 specifically being the best one, you can't really make the argument that the original custom range blaster isn't the best option. It's the clear pick for the class, especially given we can use 2.7, where it had light depletion and a longer Kraken than it did during the endgame. The weapon's extra damage, solid accuracy, larger blast radius, and more broken kit makes it a clear winner in this category. Brushes are up next, and another short category. None of them in Splatoon 3 reached the height of its previous games, where here we have Splatoon 2's Ink Brush Nuvo, specifically better at patch 4.6, where the main weapon had just gotten a lot of buffs and MPU, as well as 160 Baller, when Baller was a much stronger special, being a dominant meta pick that you sometimes saw two of with insane survivability. This would be going against Splatoon 1's Vanilla Octobrush, a dominant Rainmaker weapon, map niche with its broken Kraken, and while it did have a much weaker beacon, the main weapon had damage overlapping, allowing for a potential 2-shot at close range, though its stats are weaker in all other areas than future games. That said, I'm gonna give this to Ink Brush Nuvo though. While the special is definitely stronger in Splatoon 1 and the damage overlap is nice, the main weapon gap is still vast, and I cannot tell you how much a 160 Baller adds to survivability compared to a 200p Kraken that Octobrush could barely get. I think it's very telling that while both games were in metas with solid main weapon power, even if Splatoon 2's is due to MPU, Ink Brush managed to thrive as a meta pick, while Octobrush was always a niche at best. We're finally in the classes that are only in 2 games. Dualies in Splatoon 3 vs 2 is pretty interesting, since regular Dualies peaked in Splatoon 2, got MPU damage up but had taken significant nerfs, and then in Splatoon 3 got rebuffed with a better kit. You could debate 3 versions of Dualies for being a candidate on this list. I'd probably lean to Splatoon 3 Dualie. However, the stronger option here is Dualie Squelcher, specifically in Splatoon 2 between patch 4.3 and 4.4, having both MPU damage up to make up for the weapon's inconsistency problems and a pre-nerf Ink Storm with a solid kit, being far before all of the nerfs that happened at endgame Splatoon 2. It really can't be understated that the damage inconsistency is the main weakness for how good the weapon's mobility was, and it had a direct way to mostly get rid of that problem. After that is Brellas. Once again, we gotta go to Splatoon 2 because old Brellas were insane in that game. This comes down to Brella in patch 1.4 right after its big buffs versus 3.0 for Tenebrella. Old normal Brella had broken rain, better shield HP, cheaper specials, better paint, ink efficiency, and damage, while Tenebrella had 170p old Bubble Blower with only 1 nerf on it so far, way more shield HP, slightly better damage, better ink efficiency, and old shield cycling to the point where you can pull up your next one as soon as one was broken. 2 great main weapons with broken specials that dominated their eras. However, to settle this close tie, I'm going to give it a patch 1.4 because of a very specific technicality. Before patch 1.4.1, Brella had a glitch where it could shoot and shield at the same time, something you could actually do consistently even on LAN, but nobody really knew it at the time and it got patched fairly quickly. However, if people had the time to learn and use this consistently, it would definitely be enough to give the weapon the edge in this category. Tenebrella could do this too, but this was before some of Tent's other buffs, which means that this is still a weaker incarnation given that the launch shield has much more health. Probably the closest competition in this entire list next to 52 versus 96, but again, Brella's gonna take it here. Those really don't have much competition. The only argument you can make instead of the actual number 1 pick is gonna be old Reflux, which, yeah, it dominated Turf War and it had old unnerfed Missile, but it was also a much weaker fighting weapon due to not having buffs it got down the line. Its competition of Inkline Tristringer is a solid zones weapon, top 4 backline, and has won multiple big tournaments in Japan. Also worth specifying, this is the most current version of Inkline Tristringer, since obviously the Super Chump, Sprinkler, and main weapon all got buffs. Tristringer just has a solid, proven identity going up against other extreme powerhouse anchors, while Reflux never left the Turf War niche. On the other hand, Splatanas are similarly not close, as Stamper comes out on top, specifically in 2.0, where it got its zip ink consumption buff, but didn't get its nerfs today, having more broken burst bombs, better ink efficiency, and better paint output, allowing you to get more of the special even if it's not as strong as today, and having consistent access to double burst made it a lot stronger of a threat, with way more uptime. Given that a heavily nerfed Stamper is still a high tier today, it's just not too close. Alright, that's every weapon labeled. But which one is the absolute strongest out of these 12 options? As you might expect, there's a lot of competition, and I could see arguments for a few of the weapons on this list, but my candidate has to go to Splatoon 1 E-Liter. I think that with the skill chargers have nowadays, having access to 4 burst, 12-second location, 55% charge kill, it would just be way too overwhelming. In my opinion, it would change how the game is played way more than any other option on this list. And so, that has to make it the greatest Splatoon weapon of all time. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and next time, we'll take a look at the absolute bottom of the barrel. By the way, I gotta shout out Gus here. He gave me the idea for this video, and it was an absolute ton of fun to make. So, here it is. Finally made it.